So I was watching the Democratic national debates last night, and it got me thinking about college debt as one of the topics of debate that's been bandied about by particularly Bernie Sanders is cancel student debt. Now, there are a few other Democratic nominees that are also for the hashtag cancel student debt. Now, if you're also watching this in the future, what is the Democratic debates? Well, imagine 20 clowns that also happen to be American citizens that we put on television to debate because we believe they offer the best opportunities to fix our current problems within our society. Do they? No, they're generally just narcissists. But it's democracy, so we press forward. Back to college student debt. College student debt is interesting to me because I think I'm perhaps right at the beginning, the first generation to really be straddled with large amounts of college student debt, at least relative to Gen Xers or my parents' generation. My parents, for instance, grew up in the UC system, University of California system, where college was pretty much paid for anywhere in the UC system. That is no longer the case, not only in the United States, but in California as well. And while canceling student debt sounds nice, I can think of no simple solutions to our college debt problem in the United States. If there are solutions, they're certainly not simple. In fact, they're probably more complex than most of the things you'll hear on television in the next 2.5 years. But part of the reason young adults continue to take out student loans is because going to college and getting a 4-year bachelor's degree continues to remain one of the strongest indicators of a middle-income life, of having a higher earning potential than somebody who did not graduate college, especially over the long term. When they do the math over decades, most people come out ahead. Their investment in paying for college, whether it be with borrowed money or from their parents or money they had, or whatever, or however they acquired the money, it's money well invested in yourself over several decades that eventually pays off. It's a very long-term investment, and it continues to be a long-term investment that has a reasonable rate of return. However, that margin, that rate of return that used to exist in the 60s, 70s, and 80s has shrank massively, and that the margin you're now making off of that investment in yourself is much smaller. One, because the amount of money you're having to invest into a college degree is so much higher. It's risen basically higher than any other consumer product in America. It's risen more than home prices or healthcare. And in return, the value you're getting out of that college degree has diminished as well. Now, you're still making more money with a college degree than you would have on average without it, but not as much as you did in the past. And so when it comes to canceling student debt, because there's so much student debt out there, and because we as a society have encouraged so many people to pursue college because it offers a better standard of living, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, the government has subsidized in a large part paying for college, and that most student loans are now either subsidized by the government, through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, FAFSA, or through banks that have very liberal laws on lending to students. You really don't, it's non-collateralized debt. You don't need to put up a car or anything. And so the borrowing is very liquid. It's very free. Banks, whether it be from the federal government or the private banks, are more than willing to lend out money to students. And while this is good, so now more people can have access to paying for college, at the same time, because it's ultimately the government's, the taxpayers' money, the government's money, or a private bank's money, and not really the student's money, colleges have no incentive to truly keep costs down because it's not really a student paying for it, not immediately. So colleges have hiked their prices on classes and gym fees and dorms because they know the students will pay because they'll just get a larger loan. And so as loans become more prevalent and more accepted in society, which they have, and as I pointed out, the reasons why, colleges jack their prices because they know they can charge more money. They'll charge more money, the students will take out larger loans. And we're now at a number that's around $1.6 trillion in total college student debt in America. Now, there are some interesting statistics within that $1.6 trillion. For instance, two-thirds of that debt, two-thirds of that $1.6 trillion, are actually made by female college students rather than male. Now, the reasons to this are complex and not fully understood, but it's an interesting number to keep in mind. And nonetheless, the idea to just cancel it, to absolve $1.6 trillion of debt that are floating out there freestanding in society with no collateral. It's not like the banks can suddenly repossess cars or houses, for instance, as they did in 2008. Even if the houses were not worth very much, at least they were on the books an asset they could repossess. If you were to, as a government, simply allow a default, allow all college students to default on the loans, meaning they no longer had to pay them, the liquidity in our economic system would dry up quite a bit. Those banks and people and governments that had loaned all this money would not get any of it back, and therefore they wouldn't have any money to then lend out further on other things like houses or cars or new businesses. It would make banks and other institutions very wary of loaning out money in the future if they know there's a possibility that the government will suddenly allow, an individual to default on it if it gets to a large enough sum in society. At the same time, that may not be the real solution, is just allowing default, but saying, we'll add a tax, we'll add a kind of national federal tax, and we'll tax everybody, you, myself, 10 cents perhaps, twice a year, and we'll put that all into a big pool of money, and we'll use that to pay back the banks, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we'll use that to pay off the students that had these loans, rather than themselves having to pay or just not paying at all. And that will collectively allow it. We'll collectively pay it off as a society. But then you have a weird intermediary. You have a weird middleman, because on some level, we as a society already are paying. The largest institutional lenders are Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac, which are government arms, and those government arms are funded by taxpayer dollars. So in reality, we're giving our tax dollars to a federal bank. It's essentially what it is. Not quite, but go with me on this. We're giving our tax dollars to a federal bank that then loans out money to students at an interest rate, that then the students then take the money and get settled with debt, and then we're going to say we're just going to tax ourselves again to pay off the bank that used our money to begin with to lend to the students. If that's the case, then we should just collectively create a tax that just goes to paying for college itself and cutting out the banks entirely. But that makes a weird incentive too. It adds weird incentives for colleges and universities. Do you then add price controls to colleges? If we just say, we're going to have a collective national tax and that pool of money will then go to fund anybody who wishes to go to college, how do you keep away from runaway costs? As there's already relative runaway costs, as we've seen with the ease of student loans given out. And so if you suddenly were to say, well, anybody can go to college because we'll just pay for it, how do you keep prices down without adding price controls? And once you add price controls on a university, do you therefore discourage people that otherwise would have gone into academia to not go into academia because maybe they won't get paid as much? I don't know. These are interesting, complex questions and things to think about as you continue to watch the debates and politicians gear up for the 2020 election. Curious to know your guys' thoughts. Thanks as always for watching. Like, subscribe, click around for another video here. Bye.